No matter what I do, it's just gonna stay like that. Whatever. Um, so for this, what I do want to talk about, I don't plan on being on for too long, but for this, I want to talk about my very, very early experiences with the iPad Pro M1 right here. Talk about Xperia 1 Mark III a little bit, and talk about, oh, that's great. I don't know why I didn't just get my microfiber cloth. And talk about V60 updates and how well they've been doing in terms of updating this phone, right? So I guess first I'll get to the iPad. It's been quite a journey on this channel, testing the. Oh, that is. Give me a second. Let me get the proper thing to wipe my damn glasses off. Does everything need to pop up right now? Like Christ. Hold on. All right, give me a second. I gotta wipe my lenses down here. But my very brief experiences with the iPad Pro M1 here, which is right here. What's very funny and what's very weird is how Apple labels this thing. What they call it the iPad Pro 11-inch third generation, and that kind of like trips Google up because it thinks you're talking about the iPad Pro third generation, which clearly I'm not when I'm asking for the iPad Pro, right? And it's just weird how Apple label stuff. But so far so good. My entire journey in terms of this Apple thing, where everybody sits here and waxes poetic about how they're the best and stuff like that. It kind of was interesting to see how the iPhone 12 Pro, 12 Pro Max got beat out by every phone that I had last year. Um, how the iPad Air got beat out by everything that I had last year. How the iPad Pro 2020 got beat out by everything I had last year in terms of video rendering, which is the main thing that I would be doing off of this tablet here, right? And it's interesting because it's getting to the point where it's honestly just getting tiresome to constantly prove all these big tech YouTubers wrong and not get any views out of it, but it's whatever. I'm not doing it for the views. I just want people that actually care about it to know. So what I did was I took three clips that were two 21 by 9 1080p clip, three 21 by 9 1080p clips. I think it went up to 16 minutes 37. I sent them over to the iPad from my V60, and it was supposed to be the video was supposed to be a comparison a comparison between the S21 Ultra and the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Something I just haven't done yet. I don't know if I'm going to put that out because I'm not really comfortable with that video. But in terms of all this, the iPad Pro M1 did a very. I think it beat out the. I think it out like because I up rendered it to 4K. I did it at the second highest bit rate, which was 81. Was it kilobytes per second or megabytes per second? I always forget. I think it's 81 kbp or let me check. I can literally check by just doing it off of here. 80 mbps. So the highest, whoo boy, the highest bit rate that that KineMaster is able to do is 80 Mbps. So I decided, and LumaFusion, which is what I use on the iPad here, can go to, I think it was like 100 something Mbps. Like, let me try to look here. No. Apologies. Give me 1 second. Shut up. Shut up. So it's a 16-minute, 39-second clip. The video quality up to ultra can go up to 150 megabytes per second. So that's really nice. This is the 128 gigabyte version, by the way. So it's not like while the air decides to just turn on. So it's not like a 256 gig, but it's whatever. I'm not going to be using it for that much stuff, so it's whatever. But a lot of this stuff I feel is very interesting because the M1, the iPad Pro M1 and LumaFusion it did beat out the iPad Pro 2020, the iPad Air, the A14 chip having iPhone 12s, 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max in particular. It beat those out, no problem. And it was able to render the clip from 1080p to 4K a minute faster than the overall clip duration. So that's very good. So obviously what I'm going to be doing, I'm using the S21 Ultra to record this right now. The problem that I was having is that it's very obviously, I talk about this a lot, right? I talk about the fact that the S21 Ultra gets quite hot, and it was getting quite hot while I was rendering the video out on the phone, and it was just being super slow. So I decided I'm going to be a little bit more fair with this. So I'm going to wait till I get to my apartment, do it over again. And that's what I'm going to do today. Before I put out a video saying something stomps this or whatever, I want to at least make sure that we're in at least ideal temperature conditions. Because the 888 just gets hot, in particular the S21 Ultra gets quite warm. So I don't want to give the iPad Pro an unfair advantage, because the hotter a device gets, the slower it does processes. So yeah, but so far so good with this. It doesn't really feel any faster than the iPad Pro 2020 in terms of like overall basic usage. I don't use anything like, say, any drawing apps or anything, so that's not something that is that big of a priority to me. It is very. It is just the 11 inch, like I said. It's not the 12 point whatever inch variant, the big booty one with the mini LED display. But I don't need any of that. Not only that, but from what I've heard from a lot of people that got the mini LED iPad Pro M1, there are certain issues with that display that I personally just don't want to deal with. So honestly, the display on the 11 inch iPad Pro M1 is honestly good enough. I don't necessarily need all that fancy crap that Apple likes to push. Okay, so that's nice. Did that, like I said, I'm gonna be coming out in with a video real soon. I think what I'm first going to do is I'm going to render it out first on the V60, see how well the V60 does compared to it. And if it beats it out, I'm putting it in there. I initially just wanted to do it with the S21 Ultra, but obviously since the S21 Ultra has its heating issues, I gotta wait a little bit. So, okay. I guess I'll wait to talk about the Xperia 1 Mark III here real quick. I guess what I'm going to talk about a little bit more is V60 and updates. Um, because it's very, as you guys know, LG left the market, and LG has indeed been updating their phones. I'm not going to sit here and lie about that. It's on the June 1st security patch. So, and this is the AT&T variant. So, in able to get updates on the AT&T variant, you have to have AT&T service, especially if you got it well after the fact and you can't register your phone with LG's website. But I'll show you guys here. So, if it's even possible to see. um, it's reversed, but as you guys can see, it does say Android 11, June 1st, 2021. So it is indeed on the latest security patch right now. And bugs have been ironed out. There was a very weird bug with the V60 where sometimes when you unlock the phone, or say you attempt to unlock the phone, it'll relock itself. It doesn't do that anymore. No boot looping issues, nothing like that. I know that's still, for some people, a point of contention with LG phones. They still base base new LG phones off of what the hell they faced in the past in terms of, say, a G5, a G4 with boot looping issues. No boot looping issues on here, so that's very, very nice. Everything still feels very smooth. The camera app is still very nice, clean and smooth, easy to operate. Nothing has really changed. I can't speak on dual display, mainly because short of my USB-C port, nothing has really changed in terms of headphone jack quality. From what I can tell, I do think it's still good. It's still as good as it's been since the Android 11 update, which I do feel they did a little bit of tweaking with Android 11, but not enough for enough people to realize it. But I feel like they did a good job. They're doing a pretty damn good job with updating their phones after the fact. They said that this was going to get at least, I think, 3 years of software updates. So I assume after 2020, this is going to go well into 2022 with major software updates and 3 years with security updates, so up to 2023. So that's very nice. They did say it's at least getting Android 13, I believe, so that's very good. I guess another mini topic I do want to talk about is other phones I want to mess with. I've been thinking about this quite a bit. Obviously, I want to mess with phones like the LG Wing because the LG Wing just looks very interesting. Um, I've been looking at older phones, seeing how they look and things like that. Like, I've been, I went to eBay. It was like, I wonder if I could get an Xperia Z5 Premium for a good price, and they're like 130. So I was like, I haven't bought it. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet because obviously I'd rather save money for the Xperia 1 Mark III, which is what I'm doing right now. And it's very interesting to see. Um it, it's I'm really getting, I don't know, because after LG leaving the market, I do feel like I kind of wanted to fall to the wayside in terms of coverage on a lot of things. I don't necessarily feel like I'm being totally clear with that because Samsung phones, as cool as they are, I don't have the same affinity for them as I used to back when, say, the V20 and Note 5 were out. I don't have the same kind of I don't have the same kind of feel that I used to have for them, you know. I feel like Samsung, for me personally, kind of just it's kind of just leaving people like me in the dust that want all these pro features, that want all these power user features, and just making it so that, oh yeah, it's we're stripping all these things back, but it's still more than what you get with an iPhone. And I'm like, yeah, but used to offer even more. And there were things that there are things that people have said that Sony has indeed walked back on, like say a noise canceling headphone jack, which I feel is very important to talk about because I think one of the main reasons why they would do that is that they decided to take things like that out was because you would have to have the proper hardware to support it, right? I don't necessarily think it worked the best with anything other than the noise canceling corded Sony headphones that they did indeed have. Um, and I'm not trying to make excuses for taking things out, but I think nifty things like that aren't necessarily things that I'm going to slag a phone for taking out. You know, I think it was far more stupid for Sony to just take out the headphone jack completely like they did, but they brought it back. So it's whatever, right? Um, in the quest for manufacturers to be more like each other, I feel like a lot of these phones are just too samey. Like I eventually just gave up on trying to mess with the iPhone because it's like it's not it's boring to me now. Like it's boring to touch an iPhone and be like it's not it's not really as fast as it's advertised to be. It's quite boring and I just don't really know what else to talk about in terms of that. I have plenty of experience and insight with the iPhone. So I can indeed talk about it 12 Pro Max, 12 Pro in particular with no real problems, but I just don't really have any sort of reason to get yet another iPhone 12 Pro Max and say the exact same stuff because nothing has really changed other than the fact that, oh, Apple Music has spatial audio and that you can do lossless on iPhone now with Apple Music. And Apple Pro Raw came out, which is very nice. I'm not trying to sit here and act as if it's not nice, but it's not it's not that important to me. I feel like they took a little bit too long with that. Like you waited until like damn near halfway into the following year to put out Apple Pro Raw on your iPhone when you advertised it when the phone first came out. And within this next year, these next few months, you're gonna have another phone out there's probably going to be yet another 12 megapixel censored phone, and people are still going to cream over that. But going to sit here and crap on, say, Sony, for example, for still keeping that larger 12 megapixel sensor on the back of the phone for better low light performance. It's interesting to see how people defend one company and shit on another. But I guess we'll talk about that here real soon. So Xperia 1 Mark III. This is something that I feel is quite important to bring up because when I made the video that I made, I didn't expect it to blow up nearly as much as it did. I was just speaking, I was just talking what I wanted to, saying what I wanted to say, and saying how I felt. And when it comes to how people justify a $1,300 iPhone 12 Pro Max at 128 gigabytes of storage, but want to crap on a 256 gigabytes of base storage SD card having headphone jack having Xperia 1 Mark III, it's just kind of weird to me. How pe- and here's the thing. Well, yes, I do bring up the 4K 120. Jesus Christ, the 4K 120 hertz screen thing. I don't really care about the 120 hertz. I more care about the 4K. I know a lot of people still think that 4K is the one that's going to be completely destroying your battery. Um, Ever since the Xperia One, the OG Xperia One, the 4K panel hasn't really been doing that much damage to the battery. It's mainly been high refresh rates now that do damage to the battery, that punch the battery up a little bit more and make it sweat a little bit more. Which is why I'm not really a fan of these companies like Red Magic putting out the Red Magic 6R with a 144 hertz screen, I think a 360 hertz sample rate, and just a 4200 milliamp hour battery. I'm not a fan of that. Um, I feel like if you're going to put out a gaming phone and you're going to have a high refresh rate like that, you should at least have a 45 to 5000 milliamp hour battery. Um, this is what makes something like the V60 probably still. This phone, man, like the battery is still phenomenal. It just is. And it puts the S21 Ultra to shame when this phone has a 5000 milliamp hour battery, but it doesn't last nearly as long. And even if I were to turn it down to 60 hertz, it still wouldn't last as long. You know how I know this? Because I did this exact same thing on the S20 FE where I just turned it down to 60 hertz for a day to see if the battery life would be a little bit better. It was like maybe 2 hours better. And to me, that's just not enough to justify it. Um, it's very interesting, man, because with this phone, the Xperia One Mark III, sure, you can say you could. I personally, like I said, I don't care about 120 hertz. I don't really care about high refresh rate, so long as the phone feels good, so long as things are responsive. I personally don't care. And what I don't like about how what Samsung does is that when you go into the screen settings and you turn the what they call motion smoothness down back to 60 hertz, it feels terrible. Like it feels horrendous. Whereas, say, when I go from the S21 Ultra back to my V60, the V60 still feels smooth. I don't have any sort of issues with how the V60 feels in terms of day to day operations. Whereas, say, if I were to go to 60 hertz on this phone, it would feel like garbage, and I feel like they do that on purpose. Um, the problem that I tend to have with things like high refresh rate, especially in terms of Samsung and how people are like this is the future, is that not every single UI element that they have runs at a higher refresh rate. It's only really the main day-to-day operations of your phone. Say you want to go and use the camera, that's still going to run at a choppy 30 frames per second. It's not going to run at a smooth 60 frames per second like it does on the V60 when obviously your subject is more properly exposed. Like in day with enough light, that's what it does. Whereas S21 Ultra is just like a laggy, stuttery 30 frames per second. Um, what's going to be really interesting about the Xperia One Mark III when I get it is I really want to delve into all of the camera modes. So there's the basic camera mode, which is like the auto mode. There's the and I think there's a camera mode that has all the nifty AI tricks, and then there's the pro camera, the photo pro mode. It's going to be real interesting to see what those do. I know people have gripes with, say, the Video Pro Cinema Pro not having any sort of like log recording. No, very little, very few phones have it. The G7, the G8, the V30 has it. I think the V40 has it. I don't remember. Maybe the V50 has it. The G8 has it, so the V50 should have it. Um, then I think The new Oppo phone has it, I think. The Find X3 Pro or whatever it's called. I don't remember what it's called. Sorry, but there are very few phones that have log recording. Samsung phones don't have it. The V60 doesn't have it, which does suck. But I still have my G8 and I still have my G7 if I want that stuff. Um, it's very interesting to see how just to see what how people justify their purchases. And I'm not trying to say it's wrong. Be like, yeah, I really like Samsung phones because of their customization. That's cool. I don't have a problem with that. I think Samsung does a very good job with customization. I personally don't do a lot of customization on my phone. I really need my haircut. Look at that. Ooh. um, and I obviously can't show you the minor stuff that I've done, but um, I just don't do it nearly as much as I used to. And that's whatever. If you do, you do, man. And more power to you. But for me, I feel like I need a phone to run well. And I don't necessarily care if I get a update every month, a software update every month. I really don't care. Mainly because what I'm seeing with Samsung is that um sorry, I'm checking to see if I got any messages. An update will fix some stuff, but then break more things. And it's a very Bethesda like approach. And then if it's something that's really drastic, like say the S20 FE, when it got Android 11, the camera was basically unusable for me. And I forgot what else was wrong with it that they pushed out an update in like 2 other weeks, and like or 2 weeks later. But the camera on the S20 FE when I got Android 11 just didn't work. It didn't work. Like it was very choppy and laggy, and it just didn't make sense. Whereas when I got Android 11 on here, sure I still had to wipe my phone because I had a whole bunch of old crap on it, but the camera still ran well. The battery life tanked a little bit because I had all this old crap on here. So I just wiped it up and my battery life came back to what it was. Um, and it was getting a little bit laggy there, but it was fine after I factory reset it. I feel like with Samsung, when they update phones, they just like they have far too many phones for this. I feel. And I feel like this is what kind of killed LG when they tried to play catch up with Samsung, right? And they tried to put out as many phones as Samsung, where there was like a G8 and there was like three, four different versions of the G8. There was a V60, but due to certain, like, say, country region restrictions, they can only have certain things in certain regions. Like the V50, you couldn't have the Pogo Pen dual screen here in America. It was only in Korea. So, or South Korea. It's a lot of things like this is what's very interesting because when other manufacturers try to innovate and try to do new stuff, they get snubbed out. But when Samsung and Apple do it, approval, right? Approval. All LG did was not have a high refresh rate screen, and it was called an unremarkable phone. All Sony did was not baby its users. And it was, oh, it's not for the average consumer. All HTC did, all HTC did was attempt to make phones after the HTC One M8 at One M9, and they got snubbed out. Now they don't make flagships anymore. It's apologies, that's my air kicking on. Um, this is just what's really frustrating because I'm glad I'm glad Sony is actually making a profit with the Xperia line. They have three Xperia phones now. The 1, the 5, the 10. And sure, the 10 seems to have like some quirks and issues about it, but the 1 and 5 seem to be doing very well. And that's what's really nice, right? It's really nice to see that Sony, someone, a company that used to put out a phone like every 6 to 8 months, is now is doing the yearly thing, and they're doing well at it. And they're making a profit off of it because they scaled back. And I wish LG did that. I really wish LG did that sooner rather than later. They tried to do it last year and it just didn't work. You know, it just didn't work. People called the Velvet. People said the Velvet costed too much money, even though the Galaxy A series phone with the same chipset costed a little bit more than it. People said the Wing was just. People liked the Wing because, oh, phones are fun again. And that's all they cared about. They didn't really delve into what that phone really did. The problem is that when it's not a Samsung or an Apple phone, people don't want to sell it. You know, they don't want to sell it off of what these phones can do anymore. They just want to sell it off of if it's a quirky phone, right? Like they literally tried to sell the folding phones more than they tried to sell a V60 because it's quirky and it's by Samsung. It's like it just doesn't make sense to me, man. Like me and my homie were talking about YouTube channels that fell off, right? That we watched as we were growing up. And for me, it was harder to talk about because while I was watching YouTube when I was younger, say in like high school and stuff like that, I was watching a lot of tech YouTube. I watched a lot of Pocket Now, Android Authority, Android Central, Techno Buffalo, MKBHD. I watched all of them. But the moment they started saying that the phone I got was bad because it didn't do what the Samsung phone did, even though it did do what the Samsung phone did, and in a lot of cases it did it better, I just started to pivot away, and that's what made me start this channel. Was like, no one is talking about what the V20 can actually do, so I want to do that. I want to go deeper into it. No one is talking about what any of these LG phones can do. Nobody talked about them except for like Juan Bagnell. No one talked about it. So I decided to get into it. And weirdly enough, LG is what made my channel grow. A lot of tech YouTubers get drowned, like larger ones get drowned in this fact that LG phones don't make them revenue or don't get them views. It got me the views, you know. Even when I talk down on LG, like when I made the how LG failed the V20 video, that still got me a lot of views. And I wasn't saying that the V20 was a bad phone. Obviously not. But I was saying how LG failed. Back then, I was saying how LG failed their phone. They failed their really good phone. That in the West became the phone that sold the most from them. Well, not the most, their flagship that sold the most. And they just didn't want that because they thought the G series was their flagship. But then when they decided to make the V series, more people in the West gravitated towards this, probably because more people in the West have bigger hands. But it's just interesting to see how things have changed. I'm not trying to sit here and act as if it's just me that's talking about this. No, obviously it isn't. There are plenty of LG fans out there, but there are also plenty of LG people that just talk down on LG just to talk down on them because their phones boot looped for like a year or two. Which again is not a good thing. It's not something I want to excuse, but they got through it and they got over it. And it wasn't because of them that their Snapdragon 808 chipped phones boot looped, because they all of those phones that came out that year from LG, the G4, the G Flex 2, well the G Flex 2 had the Snapdragon 810, but the G4 and the V10, right? Those two phones were they were most definitely planned to have the Snapdragon 810, but they had to switch chipsets. So you get to this point with it where, okay, we have to switch chipsets here. Um, we have to go from the 810 to 808, and they probably tuned their phones to more take advantage of the 810 rather than the 808, right? Because LG was a Qualcomm partner back then. Even to like the G8, they were a Qualcomm partner where the G8 can run certain games better than phones now. Like it runs Contest of Champions at 60 frames per second, where this M1 iPad Pro can't, won't even do that. Where the S21 Ultra used to, but it doesn't do it anymore. It's like then they just had to pivot. Then they got slammed for going with the 821 with the G6, even though the 821 was totally fine. It's like, and there was a reason why they had to go with the 821, because Samsung bought all the 835s up at the beginning of the year. Like people, like it just doesn't make sense. Is anyone in the chat right now? Because I don't trust YouTube with when they say things like, "Oh, one viewer," then it goes down to zero. It does that quite a bit. So I want to make sure that at least someone is in the chat. Um, but yeah, in terms of this, I didn't want to make this a rant about how people step like tech reviewers basically try. It literally feels like intentional sabotage at some points. You know, when Jerry Rig Everything comes out with a video of a new phone coming out, and he bends it in half easily. It feels like it's manipulated. I know it's not. I know he's not doing that intentionally, but it feels like it when he puts out a durability test. Someone puts out a video with the title "Unremarkable Phone," an otherwise unremarkable phone or whatever, and people are slamming on a particular phone. It feels like that. Like, look at the Pixel 5. That phone got quite the beating for no reason. Look at the Xperia 5 Mark II, where Austin Evans sits there and and essentially says the camera is bad because it doesn't have, because they don't do the same tricks that Samsung and Apple do. It it gets to the point with me where I just don't know anymore, man. Sometimes I do just want to give up. I'm like, you know what? I'm throwing in the towel, and I'm just gonna buy the phones that I want to buy. But I know people enjoy my content, so I'm not gonna sit here and give up because it's getting more and more difficult out here to compete, because all YouTube wants to do is push the algorithm thumbnail kind of videos. And it just doesn't make sense to me, you know. Whew. You know, man, I just wish I just wish there was a point in time where these let me see something. Can I do this? Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, that's better. You'll see a little bit of my kitchen, but whatever. At least you don't get the overblown like side view of the windows. But what else to talk about? I'm really interested to see what, despite me pretty much crapping on the coverage of like Apple and Samsung, I'm really interested to see what Apple does with these iPhone 13s. Will they go high refresh rate? Will they have bigger batteries? The world will soon know. I was about to say we'll never know, just to do a fucking Tootsie Pop reference, but yeah, it's just interesting. I, won't- I, I just don't I just don't know anymore, man. Because again, I personally don't care for 120 hertz, but something like Sony doing a 4K 120 hertz panel on a phone still is impressive to me. You know, like I could still think something is impressive, like the world's first phone with a 4K 120 hertz display, the world's first phone with a variable optical telephoto lens. There's a lot of stuff that is very cool about what Sony is doing, and what are people gonna say when it eventually comes to the states? Oh, but it doesn't have the 10x optical zoom that the S21 Ultra has. Yeah, because what the S21 Ultra did is have a separate 3x and 10x sensor on the phone. That's why. I'm personally fine with. I think it's a 2.2 and a 4.4x zoom on that sensor, but then it has a 10x super resolution zoom, and I'm really gonna be interested to see how well that fares, and it's still gonna have Sony's very good autofocus too, very good tracking autofocus. Where I feel, but Samsung kind of does it like they're their camera does track sometimes, but it's very inconsistent. I want to really put this to the test because I got two cats, two dogs, and cats move around a lot. So I want to see how well the Xperia One Mark III tracks a moving cat in its eyes. I really do want to see that. It's just very interesting to see how people like want to just sit here and say that Sony is doing nothing new, Sony is doing nothing innovative when they are. But Samsung has been using a quad HD display on their phones for years. Haven't really been doing anything to push the envelope in terms of 4K. It's only been Sony that's been doing it. The only thing that we even have of another phone that might have had a 4K display was a V70. But we don't know that because one, those leaks were debunked, and two, there's no V70. So we just gotta wait and see. We just gotta wait and see how well this does. I'm gonna say this: if the Xperia One Mark III, and I know it has a 4,500 milliamp hour battery, but if the Xperia One Mark III lasts at least 7 to 8 hours of screen on time, if it at least gives me that, if the standby time is really good, if things like the proximity sensor on the phone is really good as well, because Samsung proximity sensors are terrible. They will it will scan your thigh as a fingerprint and constantly just like it just doesn't make sense to me. Like this is something that has been an issue on Samsung phones ever since the Note 5, right? Where the Note 5 had the same like the proximity sensor in the Note 5 was terrible. The proximity sensor in this phone is bad because it doesn't completely shut off the phone in your pocket, and it doesn't make it so that, or shut off the display in your pocket, and it doesn't make it so that you cannot have the fingerprint sensor doesn't scan, doesn't attempt to scan anything when the proximity sensor is covered. The V60 does that. Like, let me try to cover this properly, just so I can show you guys. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. I'm trying to do it, right? I uncover it. It does it. I cover it. It's not scanning in my pocket. It won't scan in my pocket, man. And that's probably what tanks the battery as well. Because let me break down my workflow in terms of work, because this is where it's really important at work. At work, I tend to throw 2 trucks each night at least, right? And those trucks tend to be like 2,500 pieces or something like that each, and I'm constantly moving around, throwing, putting them on the line, and I wear sweatpants. And what the S21 Ultra will probably do is like wiggle around in my pants and constantly attempt to scan my thigh. And then when I try to take the phone out of my pocket to say check it, oh, I can't use the fingerprint sensor because, oh, guess what? It's been incorrectly scanned 25 times or whatever the fuck. And it just doesn't make sense, man. It doesn't make sense. Didn't have that problem on here. And this is why I really don't like in-display fingerprint sensors. I really don't. I might make a separate video on that. I really don't. I like them as much as I like Face ID. It's cute. But when your phone doesn't have a fucking proximity sensor that's strong enough to keep the damn display off in my pocket, I don't want that anymore. Give me a rear-mounted one. Or give me one in the power button, like Sony does, like Xiaomi does. Give me that. I'm tired of this, oh, but it's cool and futuristic. But it... Woo-hoo. As fast as it is, if it scans my thigh in my pocket to the point where I have to put in my goddamn pattern, and I know what I can do. Oh, but you know what you can do? You can register your Galaxy Buds Pro as a trusted device and have it just stay unlocked. I don't want to do that for one, because what if I lose my phone? I'm not doing that crap. It just doesn't make sense to me to do that. Plus, again, the fingerprint sensor is so fast to the point where I don't really feel the need to do that. You hold it for like half a second and it scans your finger. I'm fine with that. Whereas on here, it takes a little bit longer. But again, when I put the phone down for a few seconds, as you guys can see, it dims, but it'll eventually turn off. And then it won't try to scan my damn finger, my thigh as a finger, and tell me, oh, it's been scanned incorrectly this many times. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, dog. I'm gonna get out of here, though. I might stream a little bit later, because I don't think anybody is really up. But, yeah. This is Sparta. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for support if you've been watching. Hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday, whatever time of day it is in your area. Have a good one.